Hey everybody, this is Patrick from MakeVirtualTours.com, and I am here with the final segment of our ultimate guide to creating a virtual tour. In this part, we are going to be taking our 360-degree panoramas and turning them into a fully integrated virtual tour and putting that online so that people all over the world can see. So just to recap, in part 1 and 2, we took our raw photographs, then turned those into HDRs. We combined HDRs into 360-degree panoramas, and now we are going to be using Panotour Pro to create a full virtual tour. Now, there are many different options out there as far as virtual tour software goes, but I prefer Panotour Pro because it's such an easy program to use, but at the same time, that doesn't come at the cost of customization. So you can really customize the interface and you can do it pretty easily. There are a lot of other good options out there. Like I said, Panotour VR is great, but it's a little bit more difficult to learn because you have to know a little bit of coding, etc. And then there's another one out there called Just Another Tour Creator, which is free. However, I have no experience with it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it, and I want to show you guys what the end result is first. So here's a look at what we are going to be creating today. This is a virtual tour that I made for a hotel chain, and if you actually go over to makevirtualtours.com/part-3, you can play around with this virtual tour yourself, and I will also be including downloads for all the panoramas, so you can actually follow along and create this panorama on your own. So head on over to this URL, which will also be in the YouTube description, and go ahead and play around with this to your heart's content. So the virtual tour consists of 7 different panoramas in 3 different sort of locations. The first part is this ballroom area, and as you can see, I'm going from one panorama to the next using these hotspots. So when I click on here, I go back to the original view, and when I click on here, I go back to the secondary view. So how do I get to these other suites? So we also photographed these 2 different suites. And the way that we're gonna do that in this tutorial is by using these thumbnails that are generated in Panotour Pro. And as you can see, I'm suddenly transported to this Natchez suite, and from within that, I can then use these hotspots to go and check out the 2 different rooms. And the Hawthorne suite is even more elaborate. We've got 4 different locations here. When I click here, I am now transported to this area of the living room, and I can check all this out. This is, again, full 360 by 180 panoramas, and I can click here and go on through it. So just to explain the basic process of creating these virtual tours, what we're going to need to do is hop on over to Panotour Pro. And the basic overview is we're going to import the panoramas, then we are going to be connecting those panoramas with hotspots. We're going to build the interface, then we're going to export those files and then get them online and embed them in our web page. And in order to do that, we are going to need to start off in this module, the home module. So we are going to create an empty Panotour project, and we're going to go ahead and import our panoramas. So these are all the panoramas that I've created for this tutorial, and I will just go ahead and select them all and bring them into this node right here. So Panotour Pro is now loading these up, and what we're going to need to do is create groups for each one of these sections that we have. So these 2 from the ballroom are going to be one group, so I will merge them into a group just like that. And as you can see, the default name is group 18, but we're going to obviously need to change that, and then we're going to need to change the name of the panoramas too. So before we do that, let's just get all the other panoramas into groups and merge them into a group like that. And then here we go, the last group here, merge them into a group. So yeah, obviously when we go and show people this virtual tour, we don't want the name group 24 to be visible. We want the name the Natchez suite to be visible. And the reason why that's important is because when we create this virtual tour and we hover over this, if it says the Natchez suite, on the group name, then it will say the Natchez Suite on the thumbnail when we hover over here. It's also important just to keep track of everything. So if you're building a more elaborate tour, you're really going to need to make sure that all your names are on point so that you're not losing them and jumbling them around and everything like that. So we will go over here, and this is the area where you can edit the metadata. So I will just change the name of this to the ballroom, and then I'm going to need to select the actual panorama and change this to ballroom view 1. Okay, so when I have this panorama selected, you'll see that a litany of options pops up, and these things all allow you to sort of change the metadata, if you will, for your panorama. So I'll quickly run through these. However, I'll point out that Panotour actually has a wonderful documentation and tutorials of their own. So I'm not going to go too in depth on everything that you can do in this software. Just for the sake of brevity, I'm going to very briefly go over these. So here we go, geolocalization. So if I input this, then I will be able to see the location of my virtual tour on a map if I include a map in my final virtual tour. The description will allow me to include a little information about the room. That way, if my client wants to include a little spiel, say, hey, this ballroom is huge, it's got, you know, it can fit this many people, da 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 da. I can type all that here, and then when I create the interface, I can give myself a section for the description. And then the projection will allow me to change and dial in how much of the panorama I want to be seen. And here is the view. And so what we can do here is play around with what the viewer actually sees. And so when I look at something like this, I say, all right, this is probably about where I want the viewer to start out when they first click on the panorama. So this is the initial view that I want to create. So the reason why that's important is because I will have to go ahead and change that here. So when I stitch the panorama, if my initial view isn't set to the right angle, then I can go ahead and just change that here. So this is the default view. I've clicked the yaw at -75, and that's based on the location here when I started playing around with it. And I'll go ahead and click that, and that's perfect. The one other thing that I'm going to change with this is I see that the view is a little bit too wide for me. I think when I have a 90-degree field of view, that's what FOV stands for, it's too wide. So I want to dial that in, make it a little bit tighter, and that way when people are looking at the virtual tour, the sides aren't all stretched like this. So the way that I'm going to do that is by selecting all of the panoramas within my virtual tour, and then I can go ahead and change the default view to 70 degrees. I think that's going to be a lot better for the viewer, so their head doesn't stretch. So the next thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and rename all of these panoramas, and I will also change the default view for all of them, and I'll go ahead and pause the video and then come back when that's finished. Okay, so now that I have all of my panoramas renamed and the default view zoomed in, I'll just quickly go over the last couple options here. This is called the nadir patch, and when you take a virtual tour, there's always going to be a tripod at the bottom. We went over in part 2 how to get rid of that tripod. However, if you just want to do something simple and add a circle or maybe add a logo or some other sort of patch, you can do that here. You can also create a background sound, which is great if you want to have birds chirping or people talking or rock music, whatever you want, you can do that here. The auto rotation allows you to make your panorama rotate automatically. And then the advanced do not generate tiles on build. I have no idea what that means, but it's probably not that important. So the next thing we need to do is link our panoramas together, and we can do that with the hotspots. So as we saw in the other panorama, in the virtual tour, we have these hotspots here. So the way that we do that is by selecting our panorama, and this is the hotspot editor down here. So once I have the panorama loaded up that I want to add the hotspot to, I just make sure that this is selected right here. And then I will go ahead and add the point right where I want it. And then I'm going ahead and link that to a panorama. So now we have it linked to Ballroom View 2, and it's going to open up in the default view, which is perfect. And we also have to make sure that the display parameters includes the title of our next panorama that we're going to. That way, when we hover over the hotspot, it will show this name right here, and people will know exactly what they're clicking on. So I've got Ballroom View 1 linked up, and as you can see, Panotour Pro, in all of its awesomeness, visualizes how these hotspots link up. So I could go over here, and when I go ahead and add another hotspot, let me see. So I think that's right about here. That's where Ballroom View 1 is. I'll click here, and just like that, it's showing me that Ballroom View 1 is the place that we're going to link up to. And once again, I could change that here. So if instead I wanted that hotspot to link up to the Hawthorne entrance or something like that, I could change that right there. And again, I'm going to change the name to Ballroom View 2. Great. So let's go over these other options that we can do. So this little tooltip, this toolbar right here gives us a lot of different options. So if we want to make a really rich multimedia virtual tour, we can definitely do that. We can add a photograph right here. So if I click here and then draw a box, then I can make that a photograph. That way our viewers can be like, oh yeah, look at that, that photo right there. I can make that a picture of Picasso or something like that, or whatever else we want. But if I don't want to do that, then no worries. So I can also add a video. I can add a text description right here. Web content, excuse me. This is for the hotspot point. We can add a lens flare, all kinds of special effects right like that. So one thing that I'm gonna have to do to these two panoramas in the ballroom is crop them in. So the client didn't actually want to show the ceiling here. They said it's ugly, they don't want to show it, so I didn't even bother stitching that into the panoramas. So what I do is I click this crop tool, and then I bring this red border down, and that way when we look at the actual panorama, go back to the ballroom, when I look up, it's going to stop right there. So in the other rooms, for example in the Natchez suite, we can go all the way up. However, in the ballroom, we're stopping right there. So that may or may not be useful for you guys. Again, if you don't want to take out the panorama, you can crop it in from the bottom. If you don't want to take out the tripod, you can crop it in from the bottom. So the tripod would be here if I hadn't taken that out in PT GUI. So I could potentially crop that up right like that, and that way the viewers can't see that down low. All right, and once we've got all the hotspots in the ballroom, let's move on to the Hawthorne suite. And I will just show you a few more examples here. That way you guys can really get the swing of how we're gonna add hotspots. So I'll click here, add a hotspot to the Hawthorne living room. So right now I've clicked on the Hawthorne entrance. As you can see, the next step is gonna be to the Hawthorne living room. And now I'm in the Hawthorne living room. I will add a couple more hotspots here. So one, which is gonna bring me back to the entrance of the Hawthorne suite. Make sure that's correct. And another that's going to bring me on to the bedroom. And once again, I'm going to have to add in the titles here in the tooltip. That way, when I hover over these hotspots with my mouse, we'll be able to actually see where we're going with the text. All right, great. So I can't do two things at once. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and finish up these hotspots and come back when they're all finished. All right, so I'm just gonna add a couple more here, then I'm gonna go over to the Natchez suite and do the same thing. Fantastic. Once we've put all of our hotspots in our virtual tour, we can head on over to the style node, the style module right here, which is what allows us to create the interface for our virtual tour. So if we go back to this virtual tour, you can see here I have these controls right here. I have this thing that will allow us to enter full screen, zoom in, zoom out, etc. And the way that I was able to do that is by coming over to the style and adding going into this plugins library and adding in the docked thumbnails and a control bar right here, just like that. So I'll double click on that and I'm able to really customize it and do so pretty easily. So these are all the different buttons that I can have on here. The zoom button and the arrows. I can have a home, etc., etc. And again, I love Panotour because of the ease of use. I mean, I really just have to check a button right here and then boom, that button is right there and it's ready to go. I can change the colors right here, which I am going to do because I'm not really a huge fan of the green and red color scheme. So these are all the various options. So the thumbnails are the parts that we saw down at the bottom of the screen, and the thumbnails that I want to display are going to be the groups. So that means that when I create these groups right here, for each one of the groups, there's going to be a thumbnail created, and I can change the size of that. I can come down here, I can change all of the lettering. Probably going to change, maybe change this to Helvetica. I can change the colors again. Probably go ahead and change the color of the type and everything like that. So I'm not going to get too into it right now, but you can see that you have a lot of options here. And I can also save that as a preset too. So if I get everything dialed in and I want to use the same exact interface for another virtual tour, I can just go ahead and load a preset from a previous virtual tour that I created. So going over to this plugins library, I mean, I can really deck out my virtual tour if I want to. I can add in a gallery of images. So if, for example, I'm shooting for a real estate agent and they want to show a gallery of images of the house that they're trying to sell, we can just put that in pretty easily. We can add in a little area for a footer. We can add in descriptions, maps, menus. The text zone, as I said, was for the description. So if I added that in, then I would be able to take those descriptions from each one of the panoramas and add that in, or I could just do one for the entire project. Oh, by the way, let me go ahead and name this project A Pretty Cool Hotel. That way I can save it. Don't forget to save it. I mean, it seems like a pretty steady software, but you never know when when it could end up crashing. So I'm going to go ahead and save that in the Virtual Tours guide. And yeah, hotel project. Cool, great. So going back to the style, again, there's so many different options, and this is really something you're going to want to explore on your own. You can really figure out how exactly you want this thing to look for your client. You can add in a floor plan, which is cool too, and that way you can create another way to navigate for the people. So if a client has a floor plan or blueprints already, or if they want you to make them, you can allow the users to navigate like that. So again, I'm going to direct you to the Panotour documentation for all that details, because right now I'm just trying to give you guys a basic overview on how to do this. So it looks like we have pretty much everything good to go. I am going to build this right now, and this could take a little minute. So the tour file name is blank. Yeah, so I need to go ahead and make that not blank. So we'll go hotel. All right, and I'm going to build that. And this is the details of the project right here. So I have 7 panoramas, etc. This is pretty useful just to make sure that we have everything linked up and everything. While this is building, you can see down here in the right corner, bottom corner, the tour is being built. It's transforming the panoramas into the actual virtual tour. But while that's happening, I'll show you a little bit more of the options that are going on in this build module. So the virtual tour we could enable a flash fallback, and that will basically, if somebody has an older browser that doesn't have HTML5, this will allow them to use the flash fallback. We have an HTML template that we can use that will allow us to just basically create an HTML file that we can put onto a server and then have a link directly to that. So we can change the generation method, how this is done. I don't really mess with this too much. We can change the JPEG quality if we're just trying to make a lower resolution thing, just trying to get things done quickly, then we can change that. This is protection in case you want security, if you don't want everybody seeing it, if you want to encrypt it, etc. You can go through there. And what I really like, another thing that I love about this program is that you can export the files directly to your server. So what happens when we generate all those files, which is already done, that was pretty quick. When we generate all those files, there is going to be we're going to need to put those online. And so the way that I do that is I have a server and I use Bluehost to host all my files. So when you go to my website, you're looking at a Bluehost hosted website, and that's where all the files are for my virtual tour. So what I could do is I could put in my FTP credentials right here, and then that will allow me to upload these files that I generate directly to that server, which will instantly create an online web page for them. But I'm going to show you in just a second how I do that instead. We can also create a Panotour viewer. This is another piece of software made by Kolor, which allows us to see the virtual tour in a self-standing program as opposed to online. And then we have some more advanced stuff. We can actually include an additional language. So if we want to have our virtual tour be in French too, we can change that here. And then we can also increase the scale on mobile devices. Yeah, so that's all pretty cool. But for right now, what we can do is once the tour has been generated, we can view that just to make sure that we have everything that we needed. So, you know, when I made this virtual tour, I didn't didn't get rid of all these different options. So these are all here, and these are various ways that we can control the virtual tour. I kind of like the hand because it allows me to just carry that momentum as we spin it. But as you can see, I'm clicking on ballroom view 2, and great. I can go over to the Hawthorne suite, etc., etc. So, you know, usually when I build this virtual tour, it's not altogether perfect the first time I do it. Let's say the hotspot might be misaligned, so if I put the hotspot right here, it wouldn't be easy to see, or if I forget to change the default view or anything like that, then I can go ahead and change that and regenerate it, and then I will, once I've got everything dialed in like I want it to be, that's when I'll create the final output and then put it online. So far it's looking pretty good. This isn't exactly the same virtual tour that I have on my website right now, but what I would do is go back to the style, and for this control bar right here, I would go ahead and just deselect these and then dial in the color and stuff like that. So if I don't want to have these options, I can just deselect them right here. So let's say I don't want to have this extra stuff. I don't want it to be cluttered. So I'll just deselect these. And when I regenerate it by doing this, those will be gone. So just like that, those are gone. Once I regenerated it, as you can see, I no longer have that stuff, the next panorama and that kind of stuff on here. So that's basically it. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to actually get your virtual tour online. So I'm going to go to the virtual tour guide, and then we have the project here. So here's where I ended up outputting this stuff to, and here I have the HTML page, and here I have all the data. So what I need to do is take these two groups of files right here, and then go into FileZilla. This is the program that I use to upload everything onto my web server, and these are all the different files that I have. So I'll go into my Make Virtual Tours, and here's the tours, and I will create a new virtual tour by clicking here and create a new directory. So I'll do hotel example. All right, so now I've created this directory, and this is now on my server, so that's great. So when I upload these files onto here, I'm gonna end up with a link, and that would be a direct link to the actual virtual tour. Fantastic. So once we've got all of our files uploaded via FTP using FileZilla, which by the way is a great, fantastic free program, I can copy the link to makevirtualtours.com/hotel/tour/hotel example, blah, blah, blah. I can see it, and now it's online. And so now this virtual tour can be seen by anybody all over the world, maybe even in outer space if they have an internet connection out there. It can be seen on a mobile phone, and I can put it into full screen mode, and I can zoom in and zoom out, and yeah, so it looks pretty nice. So our work is pretty much done. The last little bit that I'm going to show you is how to actually embed this in a web page. So I use WordPress, and one way to embed your virtual tour into a website is by using a plugin called Panotour. So this is not actually the way that I do it. However, I just wanted to let you guys know that it is an option. You can go to panopress.org and download the plugin, and then you can install that into your WordPress install. However, I don't actually use it that way. What I do is use a standard iframe. So I'll show you exactly how I'm going to do that. I create a new post in makevirtualtours.com, and when I do this, I'll go ahead and add a new post, and let's just call it my first virtual tour. And I'm gonna go ahead and put in the iframe code. So an iframe is a piece of code that allows you to embed pictures, or virtual tours in our case, or videos into your web page. So this is the code for it. You can either copy it from here or look it up online. It's pretty easy to come by. And then what I'm going to do is find the HTML web page link, and then just put that right there into our iframe. And let me just preview this to make sure that it's all good. And there we go. So there it is, my first virtual tour. It's online. All right, congrats guys, we did a great job. And once again, I will just say I use Panotour Pro. I think it's a fantastic piece of software. They did a great job with this, but there are other options out there. Panotour VR is another one, but this is the one that I use. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please subscribe to this YouTube channel, and also make sure you go over to makevirtualtours.com and sign up for the email list. Thanks for watching.